Krishna, God, speaking to his disciple, Arjuna, who is on a battlefield and about to go into battle, and his charioteer, who's just ready to take him into this battle, and the two armies are lined up on either side of this great field, and they're off to go and slaughter each other. And as they're getting ready to make this one more attempt at war and killing and battles and so on, Arjuna speaks to his charioteer, who is really God, speaking to him. And in 18 verses, he gives him the book that Gandhi read every day and based his life upon, the Bhagavad Gita, the way of the Lord. And you can all read it in about an hour and a half or 2 hours. You can read the whole Bhagavad Gita, and the same with the Tao. But you can spend a lifetime studying it and contemplating it and being involved in it. It's the same number of holes on a golf course. I don't know, there's something about that maybe has something. And so I hadn't really thought about this, and then when I heard James Fry speaking, when I read the book and then listened to him on a few of the interviews, and then read the book even more carefully, I discovered that the only thing that helped him through the entire process of this recovery and overcoming this horrendous addiction from heroin and crack cocaine and vodka and everything that you could possibly think of was reading the Tao. And I decided that if it had that kind of an impact on him, and I sent a copy to my daughter, who, as I said, struggles with these addictions, I decided that I was going to go back and look at the Tao again. And as I opened it up, guess how many verses, how many chapters there are in the Tao? No, there are not 18. But it's the same number. 81. Infinite source once. Infinite source once. 1881. And I had done 18 chapters for the inspiration books. And as I talked to James Fry, I discovered that he had picked up a copy of the Tao Te Ching. Now, the Tao Te Ching has, I'm just giving a conservative estimate. I think there are maybe 2,500 to 3,000 translations of the Tao. So that when you read the Tao, you're reading somebody's translation of it. And it's ancient Chinese language written at the same time. He was a contemporary of Confucius. So it goes way back. And trying to find out exactly the idioms and what was being said here, because Lao Tzu never wrote a word of it from all the things that I could find out about it. He just dictated it as he decided to leave this world that he was in and go off and live in harmony with the Tao. And his dictation was recorded supposedly by a gatekeeper, and it has survived all of these years. But the translation that James read and studied and practiced every day, and throughout A Million Little Pieces, he would have these little references to how what was said in the Tao really made sense to him in terms of his sobriety and in terms of him changing what it is that he was living and experiencing. And he decided that this was perhaps the most important book he had ever read, and it just kept coming back at me. So there are always weird kind of, Jung called them synchronicities, but there's these, it just kept coming back at me. And so I went and found the edition of the Tao that he had read that touched him so deeply, and he had forgotten also to give credit to the translator of this particular book, but he was advised to do so, and he did in future editions, as well as adding a little paragraph as a disclaimer, because to me it was important that the words that's in there be circulated to as many people who are struggling with addictions as possible. So this one that he read was translated by a fellow named Stephen Mitchell. And I found that out when I was up in Wyoming with Katie, Byron Katie, who sits right over here in the front row, and you'll be listening to this afternoon, one of the most fascinating afternoons of your life. Oh, by the way, this is Katie's husband. She is married to Stephen Mitchell, and he's sitting right there. Stand up, Stephen. I want all of you to meet. He's one of the great scholars alive today, Stephen Mitchell. And I've read about 25 translations of the Tao this year, and this is by far my favorite. He put it into words that are applicable to all of us today. I don't think we have that here, but you can find it in bookstores any place. So, as I am writing, I decided that I was going to write a book called Change the Way You Look at Life and the Life You're Living Changes. Living the Tao. And since January the 1st of this year, I have been writing I've been reading, I have this wonderful job. It's just the greatest job. I can't even visualize that I could have predicted this when I was bagging groceries and delivering pizzas back in Detroit in the 1950s. But this wonderful job, and they pay me, you can't even believe, I don't even want to tell you what they pay me for doing it, but I can't even count it. I need new calculators, all right? And my job is to read a verse of the Tao Te Ching, the first verse, and to contemplate it. Some of this is going to be weird, but when you get to be 66, it's you just don't care anymore, and so if it sounds a little strange, it sounds a little strange. But I have created this space where I live over on Maui, and I have drawings of Lao Tzu. There was no cameras in those days. You may remember 2,500 years ago, people had just started crawling out of caves in some places. But there are renderings, there are drawings, there are people who have different visions and versions of what he looked like. He's often portrayed on an ox. And so my job is to take these 81 verses and to read one of them and then to contemplate it for 2 or 3 days, just to walk and to swim, to do yoga, to do all of the things that are just a part of my life every day, and then to sit down in this spectacular, beautiful space that I have created, a place where there are statues and there are crystals and there are photos of my children and there are just wonderful mementos, and it's like it's an energy place. I encourage you to do this sort of thing in your own home, to find a place, someplace, a corner of a room someplace, and make it your sacred spot. This is a place where I always have a candle burning, as long as I'm awake. Actually, I have 3 candles burning. And when I'm in that space, when I walk by it, it's like a dining room in my place on Maui. And as I walk by it, the energy shifts in the room, in the house. And I feel myself being drawn into it. And sometimes it feels like it's beckoning me. In fact, I feel it right now. So I got to leave. I'm sorry, I've got to, no. And as I walk by it and it entices me to go in there, I get up, if you saw the Inspiration PBS special, I get up 3:15 every morning or so, between 3 and 4 a.m. Because it's a very special time, and it's, again, something that I encourage you to think about. As Rumi said, the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. And there's very nurturing, significant message in that poem of Rumi. Do not go back to sleep, because if you can fight the desire, almost everyone wakes up sometime between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. When you're my age, you usually think, well, it's prostate time, go pee and get back to bed. It's no big deal, all right? But there's a calling. These things that occur to us, that happen to us, that are sort of habitual with us. When we wake up, we look at the clock, and very often it'll be the same time. Oftentimes it'll be the exact same moment that we find ourselves awakening, being called to an awakening. And we just say, oh, that's great. Or we have all these great ideas, and we say, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to do this. Tomorrow I'm getting up. But right now, you know, if I were to get up right now, let's see, if I got up right this moment, and it's 3:30, and I've got to go to work, and I'll be 2 hours deficient, so I'm going to be tired all day long. If I do that, I better get to sleep instead. And this is just conditioned thinking. It's thoughts. And a big part of today's presentation that Katie and I agreed on is that this is going to be about your thoughts, about what kind of thoughts that you have. How do you think? And the question that you're going to be asking yourself is very often is the thought that I'm thinking, is it a thought that is true, or is it a thought that is not true? Is there falsehood built into the thoughts? Because the estimate is that we have about 60,000 separate thoughts every day. The only problem is we have the same 60,000 today that we had yesterday. And then we're going to have the same 60,000 again tomorrow. And then you begin to ask yourself the question of these separate 60,000 thoughts that are just constantly whipping through my consciousness all the time, just seem to be coming out of nowhere. How many of them are true? I mean, how many of them can bear up to the test of truth, that these things are true? Because when you have a thought in your head that isn't true, it changes your whole physiology. What you'll be able to see, particularly this afternoon, as Katie does her work up here with you, is that thoughts that are not true are not just thoughts that keep you from being happy. They're not just thoughts that keep you from having a divine relationship. They're not just thoughts that keep you from attracting abundance into your life. They are thoughts that weaken you physically. These are muscle tests, kinesiology. The heart is a muscle. Every organ of your body is supported by and surrounded by muscles, so that when you're having thoughts, any kind of a thought that is not true, that thought is shortening your life, literally shortening your life.